This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Sorry, guys.
Well, I'm glad you're here because we did have 5 members, so I'm going to start the meeting now. Harry's here, but he's not answering. I would like to now start the meeting, and can I rehab that motion for approval of the minutes of September 15th?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of September 15th.
I'll second.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Mr. Rowland,
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
I got abstain.
That doesn't help. I'll say aye. Harry, are you here? Well, if Harry comes, we'll revote that. Motion cannot carry. We don't have enough votes. We're going to keep going, though. Public speak. I know that members of the for the clock are here. I'm going to wait until we get to that. There is the only communication I have is that the council did approve the $190,000 we approved last time for the pool, and it also leveraged a grant we got from the park grant for $400,000. So that's done, and we did approve the extra money for Mount Tom North Trailhead. So the council always approves our funding requests, I hope. All right, so the main reason for tonight's meeting is to discuss the fact that we want to fix the town clock. A little history. As far as we know, based on all the evidence, the city owns the clock, but it's not cut and dry. We did approve a 2008 application. If you look at the CPA share, all these documents are in it. That indicates that we did put forward a repair of the clock in 2008. It was finished in 2015. There was a little money left in the account. We have records on that. I believe that was before the anti-aid amendment became something that was adjudicated for CPA funds. So now we are being very careful. The anti-aid amendment, for those of you who don't remember this, means that the city CPA funds cannot deal with projects that are privately owned in privately owned facilities, for instance, like the church owning the clock is in the church. However, if there is a public interest, we could get around that. It is pretty clear to me, based on all the evidence I have, there is an overwhelming evidence that we probably do own the clock. But until we get, and the city attorney review in, I think it was for Mayor Tosnick from Jack Fitzgibbon, our city attorney at the time, does not say the clock is owned by the city. It says that the mayor feels we do own the clock. In any case, it has been repaired. There's maintenance money that's come out even this way back to town meeting. I'm hoping the city attorney will look at all this evidence and suggest that we do own the clock. But the problem is, I don't know modern-wise if there's a title to that or a deed or something that says the city of Easthampton owns the clock that's in the church's people. And so the vote this evening that I'll ask you for is whether or not to proceed to use administrative funds to get a more definitive answer from our city attorney. If the attorney approves it, says that yes, there's enough evidence that suggests we own the clock, he's saying that in case we do get sued, since it's happened in other parts of the state. If he's not sure, or if he says no, there's not enough evidence that we own the clock, then we have to decide if we're going to proceed with the public interest part of it, that it is in the public interest, which I believe it is. And I'm hoping that through historic preservation, we can suggest that. I have a lot of documentation which was presented. We even have stuff that Greg Rowland presented. I'm going to ask now, what's going to happen if this does move forward is that there has to be, from, I imagine, the church, someone in the church, to look at what the cost is to repair what's wrong with the clock. There may be a cost to even get that estimate. In any case, an application will be put forward. Once that and I think we can proceed with that application, for instance, for the next meeting, whether or not we have the city attorney's opinion, because we have to find one way or another whether we can approve the clock, either through the public interest of having it being in a private entity, or because we own it. So my hope is,
What am I gonna do?
Harry, I can't see you, Harry. I'm glad you're here. Did you think it was 6:30? Anyway, so we're gonna move forward, I hope, but we need an estimate. We need an application with a cost. And part of that also is going to be that the planning department's made it clear that they don't want to be able to manage, they do not want to manage this project, so that'll have to be part of it, but that's down the road. So just the long and short of it is, I would like us to proceed as if we own the clock while we are getting a definitive answer one way or the other from the city attorney. If members of the church, Greg, Mr. Jordan, Michael, if you guys have any evidence, documentation in your that can help the city attorney determine it, the easiest method of getting this application passed without the anti-aid amendment being a barrier is that we own the clock. So I'm going to ask you to look for that, anything you have. So I'm going to open the floor now. That's all I have to say. We're going to try and vote on getting a city attorney. Scott.
Yeah, so thank you, Dan, for all that recap. And I guess my question in looking at that 2008 letter is, what's the determination that that 2008 letter is not enough, in that, while I hear what you're saying, it says, so it's a mayor, it's from the attorney to Mayor Totzink at the time, saying your research into the matter has determined the city owns the clock. However, the city has no ownership of the steeple. And then later on, it says, in the case of the city-owned clock, the city is spending money to repair property it already owns. I guess that seems pretty clear to me that we have on record an attorney saying that the city owns the clock. I guess, what is the, why not just, are you worried that feels not enough, or what's?
It is enough because it says your research in that Michael Totzink had research in that, all right? And we proceeded in 2008 to repair the clock at the time because we felt we owned it. But the anti-aid amendment has been, since then, has been adjudicated elsewhere in the state against a CPA committee that used funds to repair or do something with a private entity. So my concern, given that we have a litigious society and there are people that don't like the fact that taxpayer money is being spent on a church, just to make it clear, I would like to get the city attorney to validate all of what you just said, to validate this happens.
Okay.
Because then we're fine. If we do not get any validation, then we have to decide, do you want to move forward anyway? Because there's enough ample evidence, given what you just said, that it does. We do own the clock. So, but will that stand up in court if there ever is a court? So and because there's precedence for this kind of action by some other city, that's why I'm concerned.
Right. So basically the question is, as a committee, do we feel like it's worth spending money to ensure, to protect ourselves against a possible lawsuit that would I see what you're saying. All right, that makes more clear. Thank you.
I don't usually go to city attorneys unless there is that possible legal action situation.
I understand more now. Thank you.
Anyone else, including members of the church, anybody want to say anything? I mean, if anybody has anything that would help, we're going to send all this documentation to the planning department. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Scott, and because we are using money to pay this, to get an opinion, and essentially again, I imagine attorney may give the exact same response as in 2000. Whenever that attorney responded to Mayor Totznick that, well, I can't find a deed or I can't find a title to the clock, but my research, has shown this. I don't know if we're going to get something definitive where an attorney is going to go out on a limb and say definitively without some sort of like title or deed, which I'm skeptical one exists. I think this is sort of a grandfathered, it's always been this way kind of arrangement.
Things that I think he'll say, Greg, is there's precedence in that we did spend money on this clock already.
That's correct. We already did this.
That helps him. My point, we have all of this evidence prior to his looking into it. If he says, I'm going to ask point blank, are we safe to do this? Or do we feel, it's also in the public interest. So I think we go both routes when we do the application. We tell the city council, city attorney says this, pretty clear we own the clock, but also this is an historic steeple tower. The clock is important. It's public interest. So we feel safe that we're spending CPA money for the public interest, which is the main reason.
Right. And I kind of see it as two separate issues. One is who is responsible for submitting the application. And I think that's why we need to be clear on who owns the clock, because whoever owns the clock would be the entity that would need to submit the application to the CPA committee. And that's partly why.
Not necessarily. John, committee do it because it's historic. It doesn't have to be owned.
On the church side, having talked with church members, the church doesn't feel like they can go ahead with an application because they don't own the clock, right?
No, it won't be an application that comes from them. My hope, John, is that it comes from the Historic Preservation Committee, okay? Because they feel that it's historic and it's in the public interest that this steeple happen. So I need you, John, to talk to your membership to determine if you guys don't want to do it. The planning department did it before.
We've already acknowledged that we support it, and we have said before, I think when it came up before, that we approved of it, and it was exactly the kind of thing we thought was in the public interest. We understood it to be an already determined fact at that time that the town owned the clock. So there wasn't any question about that when it came to us before, but we all voted in support of the money.
Do you have records of this discussion? I assume you have minutes and stuff like that.
That would all be part of the history.
Everything you've got on it, because that helps. Also, the planning department are the ones that put the application in before. They can put the application in, but it's quite clear to me in Jamie's writing that they don't want to have to be responsible to manage this repair. So part of the repair is hiring a project manager. We're going to have to spend the money on that because the planning department is overwhelmed with projects they're already dealing with. So I have to talk to Jeff Bagg about that. But in any case, when we get there, the final application, let's say you estimate the clock will cost $50,000 to repair. Then we have to include a project manager to oversee it to protect the city's interests because it is being done in another. So first step, get the city attorney's approval. Second step is get an estimate. And I'm wondering, church members, I read in the application, Greg, that there was a company that dealt with it before, but they dealt with the face and things like that. So, well,
I consider the expert on the clock at this point to be Mike Gargin, who I believe is on the call, although I can't see him. And so I don't know if he wants to volunteer any information, but he was instrumental in 2020 for the new decade for the bell to be kind of brought back. And he's been up and working with the bell and the mechanism of the clock. And he went and I believe talked to some experts on the bell and clock mechanism. So I don't know, Mike, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
So Michael, are you able to get us an estimate of some kind, maybe moving forward of what the cost will be? I don't know what's broken. Number one, the other thing is, as far as I'm concerned, the clock includes the face of the clock, the mechanism that operates the clock, and the bell. But I have to ask, that's one thing Jamie is worried about. What do we own? Does it include the structure around the clock that holds the clock up? That's all, to me, that's all part of the clock, but that's just my opinion. Michael, continue. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, the way it's structured up there, the clock, you have the four clock faces, which have connecting metal poles to a centrally located gearbox so that they all turn equally. And that's connected to a mechanism that not only keeps time, but rings the bell as well. And the bell is what we had the estimate done on to have it in good order, considering the fact that was cast in 1875, I think it is. And it needed some work. So the estimate is primarily on the bell. We did not get an estimate on the clock.
But the clock is broken now, so we need a new estimate, right?
So what you might want to think about is, what do you want the final system to look like? You can go to doing the minimal repairs that will have the clock faces visible, synchronous, and looking good. Or you can go so far as to have the timing mechanisms be able to be addressed over a cell phone. So no one's climbing up those stairs, all 81 of them. And
I think right now, if there is different degrees of repair, you can submit those for the committee to decide. I believe the main thing is making sure the clock is functional. So when the people look at it, it says the correct time.
mm-hmm.
That's the main thing. And if it's supposed to chime at the top of the hour, fine. I don't know. But any application, which is submitted maybe by the historic committee, has to have dollars associated with it and a budget, etc. So if we want to work on that simultaneously while we're getting the city attorney's opinion, I think that would move the process along. This can be a long process, so the sooner you guys get ideas on how much this is going to cost, and from a legitimate company.
Let me ask you, Greg,
was time prepared back then? Was that repaired, by the way?
I'm sorry.
Michael, was it?
I didn't hear the question, Dan.
Was the bell repaired that it would chime?
No, the bell wasn't repaired. What I did is I disabled the bell so that it can't be rung by moving the bell. It can only be rung by moving the secondary hammer, because we don't want that bell swinging. We've got 2 tons swinging back and forth on a frame that could use some support. And so I just disabled the whole movement of the bell.
I would think that if there's a way to make the bell ring that doesn't use the 2-ton hammer, that's fine. But all I'm saying is, if you want the bell to ring, we need a cost on that. Scott.
Yeah, and this is probably a question for Michael. At least the 2008 letter makes it pretty clear that, while the opinion is that the city owns the bell, the city definitely doesn't own the steeple. And, and I know this is a little bit of a chicken or egg thing as far as getting an estimate and understanding, what that goes into. But do you have any sense of how structurally, in what shape the steeple is, as far as in order to fix the bell or whatever, the mechanism with the clock, how much work in the steeple would need to be done?
The primary issue with the steeple is that there is a crack on the inside facing of bricks. It doesn't extend to the outside, but it does have an impact on the structural integrity on the inside in some way. And that's primarily the reason I just stopped the bell. And that was brought up by the company, Lewis, and I forget the name of the company offhand, but I sent a file along with the quote for the bell. Greg, do you have that?
No,
Did
we
that
saw
get
it.
to
We saw
you?
that.
Oh, you saw that. Okay. So that's just for the bell only.
Well, I like the fact that you can get it to ring without moving a big hammer. But if there's any structural integrity problems with the actual steeple, that's going to have to be the church's responsibility.
Right.
That's pretty clear. So you guys have to determine if that has to be done prior to the clock even getting repaired. That has to be part of the equation. Anyway,
Well, it's unlikely, Dan, that bell is ever going to swing again. And even when it's repaired so that it's chiming, it will be that the hammer is moving and not the bell.
okay, fine.
That'll be controlled
As
automatically.
long as the steeple is safe, the rest of the structure, I mean, as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned, I don't want to, repair a clock and then find out we can't use it because,
No, we're nowhere near there.
Yeah, and I would just want any repairs that would be determined would need to be done before the clock. Because I think, personally for me, I think just repairing the clock without making any sort of chiming functional doesn't feel like enough to me. Like, I don't think people are really missing being able to tell the time on it. I think they're missing hearing it. They can tell the time at their cell phone or looking at, Biggie. Like, I think the times, I think it's the sound that is important. But I wouldn't want to spend public money to do that before determining that the structure, whatever funds would need to be spent to make the structure sound to allow that the clock and bell repairs to be made are something that's feasible, given that would be coming from the church or the church membership or a fundraising drive from the church, whatever that would be.
if it's necessary. I saw John's hand, then Greg, then Harry, I guess. John?
Yeah, so I just want to put it out there that I think it would be of interest to the Historic Commission, and it might be important about the order that we do things, to look into the possibility of, I know that we can look at a speaker as opposed to a bell, for example. I think we ought to look into possibilities. Sorry, yeah, Harry, can you?
Harry, can you mute until you're on because we hear stuff? Harry?
Never read her. Never read her. Never had time with this.
So, point being that if we're going to take out the bell, for example, it might have an influence on the order of repairs and what it made.
Okay. Greg? Okay. Greg? Harry, can you mute yourself now?
Dan, as host, you can probably mute him.
I keep trying.
Harry's logged in two locations.
Oh,
There you got it. And
Thank
he's
you,
logged in
Harry.
twice.
sorry, Harry, you're echoing. Go ahead. Who was it? Greg? You're muted, Greg.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. It is my impression that the clock and bell repair.
Harry, please mute.
How the hell am I muted?
I don't know why, but you're echoing like crazy. We can't hear anything. So try to mute yourself for now. Thank you.
All right. I don't think it's a conditional kind of thing where we require steeple repair in order to, be able to fix the clock or re-engage the hammer for the bell and so forth. I think the work that Mike did in not having this enormously heavy bronze bell swinging is sort of sufficient. It's not unsafe to go up there, although it's a little steep and precarious. And we have a lot of sort of elderly members in the church who, are no longer sort of climbing those steps to get up to the bell tower. But I'm happy to take, John or anybody up there and have a look at it. We do have, I have that email, Mike, that has, I think it's an estimate for the bell repair. And so I'm not sure that was shared with everybody, but
I think
but it's Verdin, which is I think is the name of the company down in Connecticut that specializes in historic bell repairs. So
there's another company that'll deal with the mechanism. Is that true? Two separate companies?
Yeah, I think we can think about this as two different things. One is, as you were saying, is the clock face. The clock is not currently running. Scott, I think you're right that a lot of people, especially our generation, don't look to a church steeple for the time. But ironically, we have had people say, "What's going on with the clock? Why isn't it keeping time?" It's very public, and so some people value the fact that the clock is off is more important to them than not having the chime. Some people miss the fact that the bell rings as something that is sort of a common experience in the community, in the downtown area. But I think both of those are, like, the bell and the ringing mechanism and the clock and the timing mechanism are all interconnected and part of what we consider the clock, right? So. And
that'll be important. When I look at the city attorney, I'm going to say the clock and the bell are what we were looking to repair, not just we feel the bell is part of the whole mechanism. So I'd like to go ahead, John. John?
I just really quickly want to put it out there that, we did talk also one time, because that mechanism is very unique and special. And so, for example, it had been floated the idea of putting the mechanism down below in a glass case, all cleaned up where the public could see it, where people could see it. And as much as I think there are some things to be worked out and a lot of public knowledge that would need to come first, personally, as much as I represent the Historic Commission, I think we are open to the idea that it doesn't have to be the antique mechanism that is making the hands rotate or the sound of a bell chime. And I'd even be happy to sample the actual bell so that we're hearing that bell, not just any bell, and work on fidelity and all of that. But I think it might be very smart not to put all those mechanisms back up there. It might both reduce cost and future maintenance and improve the possible stability of the steeple. So I just need to put it out there that I think any of those things would want to come first. We'd want to know that's where we were going before we go through the effort of going up there and getting it all working. And I know that's a big decision, but I just want to point out, I think that probably has to be early on.
Before I go to Michael, the only thought I have on that is it's an antique mechanism and therefore the historic part of it is there. I totally agree with you. Probably cost a lot to repair an antique mechanism versus replacing it and using the antique mechanism as a museum piece. Michael.
Well, that antique, it is an antique. It's really a very interesting looking contraption, actually. There's some pictures of it I've sent out. It won't be being used once the bell is repaired. So that's going to be out of the loop anyway.
Well, wait a minute. What makes the clock turn? The hands turn.
That would be done. That would be done. There's a separate motor on that mechanism that turns.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay.
but the mechanism, that could be completely, if you wanted to use that mechanism with the motor that turns the clock hands, I'm sure another motor can be installed on a separate stand that does the same thing, and that whole mechanism can be removed
So
completely.
you're talking about, just for clarification, the antique mechanism you're talking about is the mechanism that controls ringing the bell.
It rings the bell and it also turns the hands of the clock.
So we may not repair the ringing the bell antique mechanism as much as we're going to replace the motor for the clock.
So that's
I like
what yes. And so the whole thing should come out, and the clock hands should be controlled by a new motor.
Excellent. Well,
Right.
okay, let's,
And we could still get the value of the historic part by bringing it down where people can see it, because where it's at now, nobody gets to see this antique mechanism that isn't going to be operating the clanger and so on. So I'm just putting it out there that we understand that and generally support that.
okay.
Okay.
So I'd like to conclude this meeting, only because I need to, with a vote on whether to move forward with the city attorney's opinion on whether or not we own the clock, or in his best judgment, whether we own the clock. Scott, you're muted, sir. You're muted, sir.
Sorry, Dan. One last thing. Do we have a sense of how much money that would cost? In this
I have
way?
no idea, but we'll try to keep it as minimal as we can. He gets $200 an hour.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, I think it's just worth it to make sure we don't run afoul of the anti-aid amendment and have to go that route. If he gives us best judgment and we feel comfortable going forward. Because I really think that getting this clock repaired is worth it. Greg.
Just to be clear, the anti-aid amendment has nothing to do with whether the city owns the clock.
No, but it does, if we don't.
It has to do with whether there's a public interest in this historic piece. So what we're voting on, as far as getting the research and the opinion of the city solicitor, has nothing to do with the anti-aid amendment. It has to do with the scope of ownership and the history of ownership of the city. That's my understanding.
I agree, and I think we could actually make a good case that we have a public interest regardless of ownership. It's
Right.
historic and everything. So we could go both routes. That's why I'd like to proceed with the church people here to get an estimate of the cost of repairing the bell mechanism without the big bell moving, that part of it, and the clock's motor. Get that estimate to us as fast as if you can. Include someone to manage that repair, who will oversee city, what do you call it?
Who can partner with John's committee? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because the planning department doesn't want to do it. I have to talk to Jeff about that. Anyway, I'd like a motion to approve using administrative funds from the CPA funds to have a city attorney look into the ownership of the clock on the, I'm losing it. What is the name? Congregational Church?
The Easthampton Congregational Church.
That's the motion. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll make that motion.
I'll make the motion.
All right, wait, we have a motion from Jay. Who's seconding?
Second.
John? John's the second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Jay?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Andy? Andy?
Aye.
John?
Aye. Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
And I say aye. Thank you. We're going to move forward with that. Now I want to, Harry, don't go anywhere. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of September 15th. Andy had to abstain, so I need everybody else.
I'd make the motion again to approve the minutes September 15th.
And I'll re-second it.
Okay. Moving forward, Jay,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Andy abstains, correct? John,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
and I say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That's everything. Anybody else have anything to add? Greg, you and I can be in touch with any information we can provide the city attorney if the church people find anything. Way back from town meeting, here's a donation of a clock. That would be great.
Yeah, to my knowledge, the city has a lot of the records when it comes to the, sort of the repairs.
So,
Barbara LaBombard is a good resource. Our city clerk has
Yeah.
a bunch of.
but I don't want to bother her until the election's done because she is swamped right now. Okay, so motion to adjourn.
Motion to
I'll
adjourn.
make a motion to adjourn.
Andy, you're seconding.
I'll second.
Jay,
Aye.
Scott,
Hi.
Andy,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Harry. Aye, say aye, okay. And I say aye. Thank you very much.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.